time to be in the Hunger Relief Network, as I'm sure many of you are hearing and seeing on the news. Most of my week, last week, and so far this week has been spent in kind of operational response planning mode, a lot of contingency planning, a lot of chasing product for additional need that will result from the lack of SNAP benefits. So I would just ask for a tiny bit of grace because I feel like I'm a little less prepared than I normally am for something like this, just given the demands on my time over the course of the last 10 days. But I'm excited to be here and share more about the team that I lead in sourcing at Second Harvest Heartland, along with how we partner with our advocacy team to try and approach some of the needs that we have a little bit more upstream and with some government partnership as well. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. I thought it would be good to just start with a grounding in terms of our high-level food stream categories and where our food comes from at Second Harvest Heartland. Especially, I think, with hunger relief in the news as much as it is right now, I think there's some common confusion and misconceptions around what is a food bank versus what is a food shelf. The easiest way that I could explain it to a group like this that knows a lot about operations and logistics is you could think about us as a warehouse and a wholesaler for those smaller community-based organizations that are on the front lines serving communities and neighbors. And so our donation streams really, while many people think about donations as food drives, our donations think about in terms of truckload quantities. So in many cases, the manufacturer and wholesaler donations we're getting are excess product that exists somewhere out in the supply chain, whether that is, General Mills came out with a new cereal and, the community or the public doesn't respond the way they expected and they have some extra. That would make its way to our warehouse, and then we're able to break that down into smaller quantities and then send it out to our partners. Similarly with wholesaler goods, just obviously a different place in the supply chain. Also, produce, we procure produce also in truckload quantities, so single commodity, full truckloads. I was just doing some digging for next week because with everything that's going on, and we, for next week, are procuring 8 different produce commodities from 17 different growers, and so that gives you a little bit of an idea of some of the complexity. But then each one of those comes in bulk or a truckload quantity. And then we repack some of that if it's bulk and it needs to be repacked out, or just bring that into our warehouse so that partners can receive just, 10 cases of that instead of even a pallet or a full truckload. The other major donation stream for us is retail rescue. Most of our retail rescue actually goes direct from those grocery outlets to our partners, and they're doing those pickups on a daily basis, but that's a pretty large percentage of what we do. We also purchase quite a bit of product. This is one of the things that surprised me the most when I started at Second Harvest Heartland was the degree to which we're having to purchase product to kind of fill the need. Think about things like pantry staples, flour, sugar, oil, things that are not maybe donated on a regular basis, milk, eggs, etc. And we want to make sure that we have those available for us. So we'll get into another slide that talks about the percentages, but I was always very surprised by the amount that we purchase. Another category of product that we purchase are culturally relevant products. We want to make sure that when neighbors visit a food shelf in their area, it feels welcoming to them, that there's foods there that are known to them, and therefore that helps them understand that that's a place where they can come for support. We do what we call values-based sourcing, which are partnerships with emerging farmers to pay full market price. So the produce that I noted above for donations is generally excess within the network that we're just paying a small fee to pick and pack out. This product is at full market price, and the intent of that program is really more about economic investment and community investment than it is about, trying to find the most pounds for the least amount of money. And then oftentimes we receive grants, whether that's through government or private entities, foundations, individuals, that have a specific caveat of something they want us to purchase. One of those things specifically is we have one donor who funds all of the pet food that we send out into community over the course of a year. And oftentimes there will be product categories that donors are interested in, like protein as well. And then the third kind of major umbrella in which we distribute food is through government programs. So TFAP, which is the Emergency Food Assistance Program, which generally sends, again, truckload quantities of commodities, and then we distribute those out to our partners. And CSFP, which is a program to put together a food box specifically for older individuals. And in many cases, these are being delivered to senior living facilities, high-rise apartment buildings, et cetera, is an opportunity to get more food into the hands of our seniors. Are there any questions before we go on to the next one? This kind of gives you just a general lay of the land of kind of the complexity and how that works. Okay, you can go on to the next slide then. So this just helps you understand how all of those categories break down. So the largest percentage of the food that we both source and distribute is those produce commodities that I mentioned before at about 30%. Food rescue, which again goes directly from the retailer out to our partners, is about another 30%. And then the next largest is that purchased, as I mentioned. Government makes up about 7%. And then those manufacturer and wholesaler donations are about 12%. Can go on to the next slide. For those of you that are maybe a little bit more visual, which I know I am, I always appreciate this chart because it helps to break down sort of the different ways that different places that the product comes from, and then the different ways that it makes it through our supply chain. As mentioned in the introduction, so Second Harvest Heartland is the second largest food bank in the country. We sourced 160 or distributed 166 million pounds of food last year. And you can see at the top, so those government commodities, donations, the produce, and then purchased product comes to our warehouse and then goes out to either other food banks or to our agency partners and then makes its way to the neighbors. So that's kind of what the supply chain looks like there. And then there's another kind of flow on the bottom where product goes either directly to our partners or where it may be facilitated by us to our partners from grocery stores, restaurants, food service, or caterers. The one thing I'll call out on there is that online Meal Connect platform that is on the bottom there. That is a Feeding America platform. So all of the 200 food banks in the nation that are Feeding America related can leverage that platform, and essentially you sign up both potential donors of food, so those restaurants, those caterers, et cetera, as well as the agency partners, and then that platform will try and make a match between those donations. On the pie chart, you probably saw this as a very small percentage. In fact, I think I glossed right over it. It's less than a percentage point of our food, but for our partners that have on-site meal programs, is a really, really beneficial resource for them, and a way that we've been able to bring in a little bit of technology into the supply chain and making those direct connections between, maybe a conference or convention center that has 3 extra pans of lasagna that didn't get served to, participants. And instead of that going, to compost or just going to waste, instead, maybe they're able to find the soup kitchen that's within a few miles and get that product to where it can be used instead. If you want to go ahead on to the next slide. One of the things that I wanted to put in here that I thought might be of interest to this group is just how we have invested as an organization into some specific capabilities that we think have really enabled the growth in pounds that we've been able to accomplish over the course of the last several years. So we moved into this new building in March of 2020. It was very auspicious timing given the fact that we had, no idea what was necessarily coming our way with the COVID pandemic, but thankfully we had plenty of capacity to support what was needed from the community during that time. And that was really, set the foundation for us to be able to continue this growth. We have significant cooler and freezer space here. I think in my almost 3 years, there's only been one instance where we've almost hit capacity in our freezer. And so it's about the size of a football field. And then we have two coolers that are about equal size. So we have significant
Holy crap.
refrigeration to make sure that we're able to get that product out to our partners and bring in as much product as available. After that, we did a conversion of our internal systems. Heartland Hub is the system that our partners use to order from us. And it really operates like any other kind of online shopping system. So you can see all of the items that are available in our inventory and place orders directly for the ones that you specifically are looking for in the quantities that make sense to serve your community. And that really helped us understand a little bit more about what our demand looked like, and all of that information helped to fuel then how we source and what products types we're really interested in bringing in. In fiscal year 21, we made a moonshot commitment. Our moonshot commitment is that we are working to cut hunger in half in the state of Minnesota by 2030. And what that specifically means is moving about oh goodness, this is where the busyness of the last week is interfering with some of my stats that are usually top of mind. But about 80% of households in Minnesota are food secure, and our hope is that with the additional emphasis on this that we are able to put in place, that we would move half of that 20% to being that are not food secure to being food secure. So we would be at a rate of 10% food insecurity instead of 20%. So that is our goal, and that what we have been working towards since 2021. Then a few other changes that have happened and have helped us to continue to move forward. Our dynamic routing system allows us to more efficiently get product out to all of our partners. We have a network of about 500 agency partners, and many of them have multiple programs. So of those 500 partners, we actually have 1,100 different programs that we support. And that helped us be more efficient with our routing, get more deliveries out to where has been necessary, and really just optimize the transportation side of our supply chain. In 2023, we created a data and analytics team, which, having spent my career before Second Harvest Heartland all in the private sector and working for large corporations, I think, kind of taken for granted this function and how much it really enables our ability to make smart decisions, to have the information that we need to make good decisions. And so that's been pretty life-changing, especially for my team when we're making decisions about, quantities of product and that sort of thing, and having the right information at our fingertips in order to inform those decisions. And as part of that team, over the course of the last couple of years, we've been working on centralizing our data as well. So not only having the data and analytics team set up some of that in the background, but now multiple sources of data in one place. One example I'll give of this, of where we're headed, that I think will be helpful is if you think about a large corporation like Target, we receive financial donations from Target, we receive food rescue donations from Target, and we receive distribution center donations from Target. All three of those things are in 3 different systems. So if you wanted to give Target a better understanding of their interactions with our organization, you'd have to go get them from those 3 systems, rather than us being able to find that all in one place so that we could have a comprehensive story to talk to them about in terms of our partnership together. Can go on to the next slide. One of the things that I'm extremely proud of is the fact that, I think a lot of people, when you think about hunger relief, focus specifically on some of those shelf-stable goods or think about canned goods. But we've also been really focused on meeting the nutrition needs of our community. And each one of these graphs has the second harvest total, which is on the left-hand side and sort of that lime green or kiwi color. The next one is a peer average, which is an identified group of food banks that are most similar to us in terms of size, scale, fundraising. The gray bars are the Feeding America Network average. And then the blue or the teal is what's called the blueberry group, which is kind of just funny nomenclature that Feeding America uses to put similar regionally located and sized food banks kind of together so that you can understand some of those nuances. It's a slightly different peer set than the one that we've identified in our own that's in that pinkish color. But really the key takeaway here is you can see that we're, about twice our peer average in terms of the number of pounds of dairy that we send out. And we're really high on the produce side of things, especially when you think about the fact that Minnesota has an extremely short growing season. And so we are sourcing those produce commodities literally nationwide, depending on where they're available. Two of the reasons also, or the reason that these are so high for us specifically are we also send out milk and all of our produce to our partners for free. So that is products that we source on behalf of all of our partners, and we use those funds that we raise internally for that product to go out free of charge to our partners. Any questions about that? All right. Getting into some of the things that have made our jobs a little bit more complicated over the course of the last several months. Many of these have probably made the news, and maybe you've heard a little bit about them, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. But I think the unfortunate headline is that these cuts and the uncertainty about the economy in general are just creating new challenges and new headwinds for us to address. We are receiving significantly fewer funds, both from the state government as well as the federal government, as a result of some of these changes. So the Emergency Food Assistance Program that I mentioned, there were 94 truckloads across the United States of food that was canceled back in, I think it was probably March or April. For us, that was about $1 million in value and over 500,000 pounds of food that we were kind of counting on that didn't come through. The Local Food Purchase Assistance Program is a program that does a lot of the same work that I mentioned when I talked about values-based sourcing, where it's really about building up these local farms and offering an opportunity to help those emerging farmers match with a market, the market being hunger relief, and is more of an economic mobility and community investment model. That was kind of looked at as something that was on the forefront of food banking, and had some really strong promise. And unfortunately, that program has now been canceled going forward as well. In Minnesota, we specifically had a farm to food shelf program, which was very similar to the work that we do in rescuing excess produce nationwide, but provided us with some funding to be able to do that locally. So the best example I can give is you get to the end of the season, like we are right now, and lots of farmers are contacting us with extra winter squash that they have available. And we used to be able to tap into some state funds in order to be able to support those additional pounds. And unfortunately, that support was eliminated in the legislature this year. If you layer on top of all of those cuts, sort of the just general economic uncertainty as well, so the tariff landscape, which is constantly changing, inflation, and just some of those general headwinds, so much of the donated product that we get from manufacturers and distributors is a result, right, of the risk taking that exists when planning inventory and planning supply chains. And almost all of our partners that we've talked to, all of our donor partners that we've talked to, are trying to minimize that risk right now because they're trying to maximize, the predictability and, their financials as companies. So that has made it difficult for us because as everybody tightens up their inventory, that means that there's just inherently less excess available that generally would make its way to the Hunger Relief Network. You can go to the next slide. So these are some of the areas that we're really focused on. As I mentioned with the cost increases, specifically low cost protein options have been really hard for us to find. And that's another one of those categories that we've been focused on trying to bolster for our community because we know how important it is in terms of being able to get a complete meal out to our communities. Tariffs, not only on products themselves, but for packaging is really where we're seeing a lot of the increases. We buy a lot of bulk potatoes that come in like 1,000-pound totes and repack them in our volunteer center into 40-pound bags because that's just an easier amount for our partners to manage. And the bags that we put those in have increased 30%. We just got that cost increase. We checked 6 other suppliers and it was still the best deal that we could find. So a lot of even just those input costs are hitting us as well. And then lastly, all of these types of kind of economic uncertainty and just the challenges that exist right now are causing us to think a little bit differently about how we serve our community. So we have a new mobile distribution trailer that we're able to use to fill gaps in access. So maybe there's a community that the food shelf is open limited hours, and it would be helpful for that community to have evening hours or weekend hours, then that's something that we can look at. We have some specific focus communities that are priorities for us where we know that food insecurity rates are significantly higher and there's a mismatch between the resources that are available in those communities and those rates. And so we're trying to figure out community devised solutions. And then, as I mentioned, where I've been spending most of my time recently is in this government shutdown support. So right now, we're trying to ramp up the product that we'll have available so that when folks don't get their SNAP benefits in November, there's at least some place for them to turn. However, I will say in Minnesota, we spend about $72 million a month on SNAP benefits. And there's absolutely no way that the food bank network can support that amount. But we are trying to make sure that there are options available in getting more food out to the degree that we are able to. I'm going to shift a little bit because one of the unique things that we do at the food bank is called the Midwest Food Hub. If you go to the next slide, everything basically that I have talked about so far has been in service of our partners that are distributing food to neighbors, specifically in the state of Minnesota. But we have the Food Hub, which exists as one of 11 Feeding America produce cooperatives or partner state associations across the country, which basically does the similar type of work. And really, this is a sourcing to excess model, which means when we are working with growers in Minnesota and Wisconsin, that they have more product than we could take and more product than we could distribute to the other food banks within Minnesota, then there's a platform where we're able to offer that product up to all of the Feeding America food banks in the network. And then that product gets shipped directly from that grower to that person, or we decide to bring that in for Midwest Food Hub. And as I mentioned, we're bringing in truckloads of single commodities. We offer then this service of basically mixing truckloads. So if you're a smaller food bank in, say, Iowa or Missouri, or we work a lot with North and South Dakota, you can see in Wisconsin, you can see the states that are highlighted there. But essentially, we operate as a mixing center. So they still get the benefit of us being able to purchase at scale and offer to pass that discount along. But instead of having to take a truckload of apples, now they can get a truckload that has, maybe 6 pallets of apples and 4 pallets of potatoes and 2 pallets of onions and 2 pallets of carrots. And maybe they can put a pallet of frozen protein on there and some dry goods. Just whatever it is that meets the needs of their community, but within kind of the confines or the restrictions of their capacity. And so we're able to kind of right size that for them. Many of those food banks that we work with have limited storage or just don't have large budgets. And so they need to be purchasing in smaller quantities. But this allows us to take kind of this infrastructure that we've built in this building and leverage it beyond just our local community and even the state of Minnesota, and be able to leverage those capability and those infrastructure investments beyond, kind of our four walls. Then the next couple of slides, I'm going to talk a little bit about our advocacy and policy work. One of the reasons I feel like this is important to highlight is for a very long time, food banking has been focused on just getting as much food out there as possible. And there are a lot of models that would say that with the amount of food and the increase in food that's made its way out there, food insecurity shouldn't still be an issue. And really, that's where it comes into being. It's a bit more of a policy issue or an advocacy issue. We know we can't solve hunger with food alone. So if you go to the next slide, we have a 3-person advocacy team here at Second Harvest Heartland, but the rest of us are very engaged in this work as well. So I'm going to start actually on the bottom right. And so talk a little bit about our engagement with advocates, partners, and legislators. So as a food bank and including the advocates that we've signed up in our community, we sent over 12,000 messages to lawmakers. There's a Hunger Day on the Hill at the Capitol, which is one day that is specifically focused on hunger relief advocacy and lobbying efforts. And we had over 200 attendees at that. 20 plus testifiers in Senate or other legislative hearings, and 60 plus meetings with legislators. This is probably one of the most interesting parts of my job that I didn't even know I was getting into when I started here. But I've really enjoyed the conversations that I've had with legislators, and I've testified a few times sharing, some of the challenges that we face in trying to continue to source foods as all of those headwinds are going on. And so we really think about advocacy that while we have support and 3 full-time employees who work on that team, it's something that all of us can do. And through those efforts, we secured the dollars that you can see at the top there. So $5 million for food banks, $5 million for food shelves, $1 million for prepared meals, and $1 million for tribal food sovereignty in this last legislative session. Obviously, we're being positive in this recap and didn't include the things that we lost, but we're always excited about where we have some policy and advocacy wins as well. Go ahead on to the next slide. And this is the last slide I have prepared. So I'm looking forward to if the group has any questions after this on any of the topics that we have covered. But these are not firm at this point, but we're still working on some of our legislative priorities. But this is where we're thinking additional permanent funding for the Minnesota Food Shelf Program. Actually, Governor Walz announced $4 million in additional Minnesota Food Shelf Program funding yesterday as a result of the impending SNAP issue. But it's something that we've been asking for ongoing so that we're able to plan for that and more efficiently bolster the system rather than operating a little bit more in crisis mode. We get, I think I showed it on the previous slide, about $5 million in food bank grants. And we have been awarded those in the last 2 legislative cycles, but that is not permanent funding. So what that means is every year we have to ask for it again, and we don't know if we'll get it. And then we have to scramble when we actually do. So it would just be great if we could get that into the budget so that we're able to do that more efficiently. And then the last one is a very kind of odd restriction that Minnesota has that you cannot donate eggs past their expiration date. So despite the fact that they're good long after that expiration date, there is a statute that doesn't allow that to happen. And so one of the ways that we're really hoping that we make a difference, not only for hunger relief, but also in the waste stream, is to get that rule change implemented so that retailers would be able to donate that similar to the way that they do with other products that are close to or at expiration. And then the other half of the work will be around improving access and being able to mitigate some of the harm or impact that has come from SNAP changes in the OBB. So are there additional supports that we can leverage for individuals who are no longer eligible? How do we make sure that people are held harmless for those overpayments during this implementation where it's unclear where things start and end? Minnesota is a state where SNAP is administered at the county level. And so there's a lot of challenges with that. And so there's a need to upgrade IT systems and then some additional training and supports to make that process more efficient as well. So that's what I have prepared. I would love it if there's any questions from the group.